something or other.
Okay.
This is Sunday, May, what is it?
22nd.
22nd at Tupting Pungaling in Deerfield Beach, Florida, where it's 9,000 degrees outside. I exaggerate. It's not a good habit. It's otherwise known as lying. Oh, well, some habits die hard. Let's just take a moment to get settled back into, Gompa mode. So find a groundedness in sitting here and recognizing, that there's no place else you need to be, that you chose to be here. You could always leave. But letting go of whatever your to-do list is for later and whatever the busyness of getting here. The residue from all of our activities of the morning. Just breathe into your seat. And try to experience sitting here with the fullness of your body, not focusing on any one thing, but just being aware, the sensations of the body, thoughts in the mind, the feelings of the mind, pleasant or unpleasant. Temperature of the room, feeling of the mask on your face. Relaxing into the decision to be here. And try to remember the reason you decided to show up. And based on that reason, generate a positive motivation to use this time well. The Buddha recommended that we listen to the teachings with an open mind, an open heart, and with our discriminating wisdom. And then we try to remember that whatever we're not doing just for ourselves, but through benefiting our own minds and hearts, that we can come to benefit others around us. So we try to set a motivation, does this for the benefit of all living beings. So we'll begin with the refuge prayer. It's on page 98 of the book. Actually, so today we're going to recite this prayer 21 times because Kadrola recommended that we recite this often for the health of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is the spiritual director of all the FPMT centers, to remove obstacles to his health. And the teachings say that if our teachers are ill, it's due to our lack of merit, that we're somehow, it's through our own causes and conditions that we don't have a healthy teacher. So we want to do whatever. So going for refuge and generating the mind of bodhicitta is a really good way to increase our merit. But if it's heartfelt, so if you consider yourself Buddhist and so you're comfortable saying the refuge prayer, or comfortable saying it to remove obstacles for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, whatever your motivation is, but it's because of Lama Zopa Rinpoche that all these centers and Lama Yeshe, all these centers got to the West, and I wouldn't have the Dharma without it. So so whether you've never met him, doesn't matter. It's just that everything that you experience in one of these centers is due to his effort in the beginning, decades and decades ago. So due to his wisdom of creating all these programs and everything else, he has so many projects. So, all right. Everybody good with that? All right, I'll count. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So now rejoice and dedicate it to the removing all the obstacles for Rinpoche's long, happy, healthy life. So now does everybody feel, much more impressed when you hear someone's done 100,000 refuge prayers or 100,000 this and that, or 1,000,000 mantras? So, because this is what a retreat where you're doing, like the preliminaries for long retreat involve things like 100,000 vajrasattva's, which took me 4 months, 4.5 months last year. It took me a long time. And of course, the purpose isn't just to recite the words. The purpose is to try to have your mind and, with an appropriate motivation. And so there can be times where you're kind of going, oh yeah, I've totally lost the plot, and you have to regroup. So let's read the 4 immeasurables on page 34. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Okay, so did anybody learn anything this week? Anybody practice with their own self-talk, their increase your cherishing of yourself as one of many sentient beings?
Cherish, I translate that in Spanish. I didn't know that word in Spanish. To appreciate, apreciar.
Good. So no one other than Steve at least learned it in Spanish and had a deeper meaning from that. okay, we don't make much progress if we don't do anything. Just saying it. You know, not lying a guilt trip, but if you want to change your mind, transform your hearts, you know, create the causes of happiness, you got to make the effort. That, and obviously all of you have done things for others this week, have in your actions cherished others, have thought of others, you know, all that stuff. So, and that doesn't discount any of that. You know, we should always rejoice in all the things that we do where we're putting someone else, you know, at least equal to ourselves, if not above. You know? Yes,
Also
Ralph.
something, because others might benefit. So 5 years ago, ended a relationship, no contact for a couple of years now. I get a text out of the blue, and I got agitated.
Right. Can y'all hear Ralph? Okay.
I got agitated. And of course, I start going on in my mind about why, what she wants, what's this about? You know, it's all about me. But this is progress, because after a little bit, I finally realized as I thought about it that the reason why is probably because she's suffering. She's probably in pain,
Excellent.
you know, and so that allowed me to like at least get on the same level and get out of my own insanity about it. And it really helped a lot to have reached that point,
To be able to even think of it.
think of her without being codependent about it. When you
Right.
say, oh, are you okay?
Right. Yeah, because that's the thing, right? Because codependence is about us. We think it's about them, but it isn't. It's about us. So, you know, but being able, I mean, that's excellent, because that really is, it's as simple as that. Oh, why are they doing this? Because they're suffering and they're trying to feel better. And maybe they're going about it in an incredibly stupid way. Gee, have you ever done that? You know, so we don't have to feel like, aren't they an idiot? It's just simply that this is what we do. This is why we're not enlightened. This is why we're still stuck in a state of suffering, because we keep making the same mistakes again and again and again, thinking that somehow focusing on what we need and want, desire, you know, how we can make this moment better, you know, is going to bring us to happiness, when it doesn't work. You know, what it mainly does is help us focus on what we don't like about this moment. You know, and then sometimes what we don't like about this moment is us. You know, so we're trash talking to ourselves, you know, and that's a practice we don't want to do. You know, that's exactly what we're trying to drop, is this judging mind, you know, that's just looking at superficial things. That doesn't mean we don't need to assess and evaluate and, you know, those things, because we do need to do that, mostly from within. We need to look at our own actions, our own ways of thinking, and assess whether they're skillful or not, whether they're getting us where we want to go or not. So our motivation really matters. You know, really being able to think, okay, I want to approach this day with a thinking about, you know, not the stuff of everyday life that we all have to deal with, and all, you know, and all the different ups and downs of that, but really, I want, you know, I want to come from a place that values others, you know, that values myself, in the sense that valuing others is the method to create the causes of happiness. So last week when I talked about something, I was asking about, what was I asking about? I love how I can't remember how conversations go. So I always start in the middle of some conversation. All right. Anyway, I was asking about something and everybody brought up equanimity, looking at friends, enemies, and strangers, you know, and recognizing that those labels are all relative, they're impermanent, they change all the time, that there's no reason to value any of these people differently or treat them differently based on those labels, you know. But with equalizing self and others, so basically with the equanimity exercise, of, friend, enemy, stranger. You are equalizing the friend, enemy, stranger. With the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others, you start with that. That's equanimity. You always start everything with equanimity when you're trying to develop the mind that cherishes others. But then you need to equalize yourself and others. So now it's not friends, enemies, strangers. It's me and the rest of you, me and everybody else. So the practice of friend, enemy, stranger is not enough. You need to go to that next stage of recognizing our labels of self and other are equally, transitory. They're equally relative because every one of you is a me and every one of us is an other. So there's no real meaning in self and other. It's just a point of view. Because we want to break down our sense of separateness. Making sense here? I want to look at something in the chat first. That's great, Patty. Patty was saying she got herself with some negative self-talk, and instead of just saying, stop it, I was able to say, oops, not helpful. And it really matters. Sometimes it's helpful to be stern with ourselves. Sometimes we just have to get a grip and not eat the 5th chocolate cake. We have to do that. Most of the time, though, we really need to just be gentle and say, not going that way, change direction, be gentle with ourselves. Because it isn't about rejecting ourselves, it's about transforming, all the good qualities we have, making them more expansive, and by its nature, it will reduce the not so great habits we have. Yes, Barry.
So I know I was not here for last week's conversation starting it, and I think this would fall in line from what you were asking as well. So I guess something that was beneficial for myself and something that I'm working on that's beneficial for others at the same time. I ran into a Dharma book of children as a nutrition, and this Dharma book is called Sitting Still Like a Frog.
Like a frog?
And over the past, I'd say 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I've actually had online conversations outside of inside
The office.
Handing out some of the books, discussing with the parents, and it actually addresses how to work with emotions. And it really is about the parents setting themselves up to succeed. So for them to actually practice these things in a very nice way. I've read it, and then I've actually had a couple of online conversations with social workers who work with families in the same capacity.
Yeah, so that's so Barry's just sharing how in his pediatric practice, he's been sharing with outside of the office, sharing with parents and social workers, a children's book on sitting like a frog. So it's, how to develop calmness for children. It's like in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, he recommends that everybody have a breathing room in their house, where you just, if things are getting a little out of control, you just take your child's hand, walk into the breathing room and sit down and breathe. So, but these are ways that we can really benefit others, by sharing when appropriate, because the main thing we want to work on is ourselves. And then if someone asks for help with this or that, then we can offer them the tools that we've learned, that we know about. And they're wonderful children's books on mindfulness and meditation, all sorts of things. One of the really popular ones is something about a moody cow. Yep. I can't remember the title, but yes, working with a moody cow. So, and of course online there are all sorts of things, but you do want to screen them to make sure that, because there's also a lot of garbage out there on the internet. So you really want to make sure that they're grounded in time, that people have, really investigated whether the technique works. And then if they're grounded in ethics and they're grounded in, cherishing others as opposed to just taking care of self. So so we want to rejoice about all those opportunities that we take and act upon, but we also want to develop a practice so that we've developed consistency, so that we can, so it's not just, oh, one time this week I remembered to, blah, 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 so that we can it becomes just more habitual for ourselves to have these thoughts. So, I mean, one of the practices, it's like, if you're not good at pausing before you say something or pausing before you do something, you need to practice just stillness, getting comfortable with no movement at all, doing nothing. So that then out in the world, something happens and you can just mentally pause so that you don't say or do anything that you wish you hadn't. And this includes saying or doing anything to yourself that you wish you hadn't. So it's that. So when equalizing self with others, it's really about acknowledging that we tend to operate in a mode that is all about what's best for me, or what, how can, what can I get out of this moment? Doesn't mean we don't have moments where we're, thinking of others. It's just that even when we're thinking about others, it also has this attachment about what we want in there, where we'll, kind of try to rush a conversation with someone else because we'd like to be doing something else, as opposed to being able to, for this moment, maybe you only have 3 minutes to spend with someone, but you fully attend to them for those 3 minutes. So it's about recognizing that, yes, we have needs and things that we do, but we, if we commit to helping someone else, we want to be fully there, not partly there. And that all takes practice. And so one of the things that is the benefit of doing practices, like reflecting on whatever you're reading in the Dharma, reflecting on what's the, why cherish others, and thinking about it on the cushion, so that then it's just in there and you can kind of, oh, that's right. I remember that maybe my sarcastic judging mind isn't the way to get to happiness. Maybe I can spend a moment recognizing this person is just as important as I am. Not more important, just as important. And this is my opportunity to serve them for this moment. But we have to really look at, why is it that everybody's equally important? Because otherwise we won't know what our obstacles to that are. What comes up in the mind? What are all the excuses for not doing that? Or even being aware that we do it at all? Because I would bet most of us think that we're, at least, for the people we like, or the strangers that we interact with, that, we see them as equal. But when we have to look at, why is it there always some way in which I rationalize treating this person differently from that person? In our minds, doesn't have to be actually in any act, like, because, we're, we might be, comfortable trashing someone in our minds, about the way they're dressed or the way they talk or whatever it is, maybe something less superficial than that, but we never think that way about our friends. You know, so we really want to recognize these ways in which it shows up that we're not being equal. And when we trash talk ourselves, you know, it's the same habit. It's somehow saying, you know, I'm less than, and that doesn't help. We all need things to, you know, we all can use improvement. That's why we're here, you know, but it's not, you know, it's not about thinking that where we're starting from isn't good enough. We're starting from wherever we are. And that changes from hour to hour, sometimes from minute to minute, you know, where we're just all over the place. Comments, objections? So we have a debate. I have debate tonight. Oops, I just clicked on something and changed pages.
I have a quick comment. Last season, Ozark, Netflix.
Oh, lovely show.
I got a lesson in love. Catholic priest is who represents the mob is.
Anthony, did you turn that part on?
I did. I think this is off.
Looks like the mob is counseling Marty on something. He says, is your love conditional? Or is it unconditional? Well, if it's conditional, it's transactional.
Right.
And unconditional, not transactional. And it really struck me hard in terms of this concept of equanimity and what's really in it for me? What am I really?
Yeah, we create emotional contracts with people. And do we present them anything to sign? No, but that's how we think of it. Definitely, you know, it's like whenever we start to do things for others based on some expectation of return, it's a contract. You
The
know,
last thing he said, by the way, was, are you judging or are you loving?
Cherishing,
yeah,
judging or cherishing.
yeah. You know, this is, so we want to look at these ways in which we are missing opportunities to transform our habits. You know, and not being mean with ourselves. I mean, I think developing a sense of humor about how predictable we can be because our habit energy is so strong, you know, and that's why having voices that say, oops, not helpful, or, oh, hello, friend, I know you. I'm not going to listen today. So you just, you know, it's just a way of being able to acknowledge this is happening and it's not helpful, and trying to divert yourself to doing something differently, thinking something differently, approaching it differently. And sometimes it's just a matter of just going, I'm not going to think about what they're wearing or how they're talking or what music they listen to or whatever superficial, you know, garbage is going through your mind, you know, or, you know, you know, it's just, you have to look at what your own judging is about and go, okay, why don't I just look at what's going on inside my own self and assess whether it's helpful or not, as opposed to constantly, you know, looking at others, instead of looking at others from that perspective of they're either, you know, they're expressing themselves from their suffering, from their wounds, you know, even when we're happy, you know, that the one reason we go up and down on this roller coaster is because even our happiness involves attachment, and it involves, you know, getting something we want. And it involves, you know, trying to make that permanent. You know, so it's, you know, it's like when you're on a vacation and you spend all your time taking pictures. Oh, let's make this moment permanent. You know, and you don't actually experience the moment. You just experience taking the picture of the moment, you know, which is fine. It's great to have. The older I get, the more pictures I wish I had. What was on my list of things to do, you know? So how is the altar set up? So it's not, it's not begrudging any particular activity. It's recognizing that often whatever activity we're involved in doesn't get us anywhere. It's not going to add to our valuing of our own lives and others. And this is why, when we do something for others, it feels good. We like to be valued and to be needed and to be useful and to have purpose. That's part of our Buddha nature. This is part of the reason we can know that we have the potential to perfect that, to where our own thoughts of ourselves don't even come up because it's not relevant to us. We're just, we're just keen to be part of this group called sentient beings, living beings. So we want to look out for any signs that show that we might be putting our own cherishing above others, cherishing others, because that's what we want to do in equalizing and exchanging self for others. We first want to see us all as being equally, valuable, equally deserving of happiness, equally deserving of our consideration, blah, blah, blah. Then we want to exchange our habit of coming from our self-centered point of view. Anthony, it's very distracting. Just forget about it. Thank you for helping to serve others, but we're going to let go of the microphone if it's okay. Thanks. See, I'm distracted. What was I saying? So we want to recognize when our own self-cherishing is a little up over everybody else, and we rationalize it, don't we? Makes sense. Was that what I was saying, more or less? Did you have something to say, Hernan?
Yeah, it was actually totally related to self-charge, because sometimes there's some intolerance that comes to others' opinions or point of views or comments. And
So intolerance rises in yourself
yes,
due to someone else's views or
and
opinions.
that intolerance is pure self-charity, because how can they think about this situation with that point of view? That's totally wrong, and that's disturbing. And when anything like that grows inside me, it's so difficult to cherish them, because at first I already put them at the bottom of the trash bin,
Yeah.
So like, how am I going to cherish someone if I already started with that point of view?
You can't.
Nothing good will come up from inside me. That's like on the meditation, when you're talking about the sunny day and the cloudy day. When you have the cloudy days, the perceptions that are obfuscating the sunlight from reflecting on the lake. So basically, if you have that color lens, that will change your perspective from the world, nothing will shine.
And this is the beauty of just deciding today, I'm just going to do everything from the perspective of cherishing others, because it will change the tone of your day. It will make, a gray day a lot less gray. Just starting from that point, just trying to do that, and every time you get off track, which will be frequent, you just get off track, you just kind of go, oh yeah, that's right. I want to like the people around me. I want to, acknowledge something. And as soon as we're hooked, and I do this too with opinions. Opinions are really deadly for me. It's just like, and I make them deadly for me. Like, they matter. I remember when I was young and I was traveling in Europe, I think, and I would eat at vegetarian restaurants because they were cheap. I wasn't a vegetarian, but it was cheap. But and the vegetarian restaurants at that time, because this is back in the 70s, early 80s, were like big group tables, so you just sat down with a whole bunch of strangers, and people would talk a lot about politics in other countries. I mean, it's just an average, and they would disagree and da 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 da. But there was I'm sure there was some animosity in there. They're not perfect people, but there was a comfort level of discussing these things at different points of view, without drawing any conclusions about it, about the worth of that person, because friends can disagree and da 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 da, and whereas in our culture, it's like one of those things you don't talk about, socially. You don't talk about your religion, you don't talk about politics, I don't know. You don't talk about your bathroom habits. We have all sorts of rules. And so and so we haven't developed any ability to tolerate different opinions, different points of view. We haven't become comfortable with recognizing, we all have different points of view. And we may think that our point of view is a healthier point of view. And we certainly want our government to be led by, our laws to be led by from a healthy point of view. That doesn't have anything to do with thinking that that person who has a different idea of how that should be accomplished is somehow less than you. Because after all, you'd want laws to change for them too. It's not like, it's not that attitude of, love it or leave it. It's just this, like, that still just cracks me up, because it's not like easy to leave it, is it? You can't actually just go anywhere you want to live. Our own immigration problem should show us that. And we have really open immigration in this country. So it's just, Australia, for 2 years, they didn't let citizens come back. They closed their borders. So couples were separated for 2 years. They have really tough, and this totally off the subject, but they have really some of the toughest immigration laws in the world. So, it isn't, we want to understand that we may completely disagree, fundamentally disagree, deep down disagree with the way solutions should be enacted. But it doesn't mean that the person who holds a different point of view from you doesn't deserve happiness and freedom from suffering any less than you do. It has nothing to do with it. And in fact, they're coming from that perspective too. I just want happiness and be free of suffering, and I disagree with how to get it. So we really want to, it's really helpful if you can practice listening to other points of view from the safety of your own home in front of a TV set, to learn how to cherish people with a different point of view. To keep reminding yourself they also want to be happy and be free of suffering. They also want their children to be safe, their families to be safe, all of those things. They have a different point of view. Yes.
How do you handle not wanting somebody else's will inflicted upon you, like other people?
You fight
would
for
like
your
to
own
do?
will. I mean, that's why we vote, right? That's why people go into protest marches. That's why people sign petitions. That's why people write letters to their congressmen. That's why people, it isn't that we don't get to have a voice. We want to use our voice over the loudness of the noisy machine out there.
No, I understand accepting other people's points of view and but when somebody wants to inflict their will upon you,
Everybody wants to do that. Don't you want to inflict your will on someone else?
I try not.
You try not to.
Very hard.
It's very hard, isn't it? So they're no different than you. It's just, they may, not respect boundaries as much as you do. But why wouldn't you put your voice out there to try to get the world to have, rules and things in order to, make the world a better place? That's how democracies work, is through our voices. So that it's not just some, military government or some, dictator government telling us everything. We vote. We try to express our point of view. We try to elect representatives for our point of view. Nothing wrong with that. It's that when we want to go shoot everybody, that because they have a different point of view, that's not acceptable. It doesn't work. Doesn't make anybody happy. It makes everybody more afraid. But the people doing that really think this is a solution. And they are just very distorted about what, they don't have wisdom there. But does that make them less valuable than you? No. It might just mean they have to spend the rest of their time in prison because their actions are not acceptable. But we don't throw away people because guess what? They come back. Just like you do. According to Buddhism, every mind that exists has always existed. We just keep changing bodies. There's no new minds being created. They're just different bodies being taken due to our karma. And enlightened beings don't have to take a body at all. So they don't suffer in this way at all. They don't suffer at all because they don't have these bodies in which we're determined to be separate from the us and them, you and me. No? Yes, Marian.
Interesting what you said about people in other countries coming up to you and talking about politics. I'd never run into that before, because most people have their agenda. They're going to receive, their tourists or whatever. The last time I was in Austria, a man, I guess he figured out I was American. All you have to do is look at us with our tennis shoes. Right?
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
really,
where-
we're very easy to
where-
spot.
And they can spot you. Anyway, he came up to me, he was from a different country than Austria. And he came up and we started talking about politics. And I thought, wow, this is weird, He was really going on about it and wanted to talk about what was going on in this country and all. Fortunately, we agreed. But, I didn't really interact that much because you never know when somebody's going to get.
Well, because it's different in other countries than it is here.
But it was wild that he approached me like that. He didn't know my name or anything, he just wanted to talk politics.
Yep.
It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, like that was the first conversations I had when I moved to Australia. People would come up and talk about the politics of the US because it's mandatory to vote in Australia. So they all are better informed about everything because they have to vote or get fined. So it's just different here. And maybe the Civil War created that, that it's just like, because then, people were arguing within their families. I mean, it's just, and so who knows, but it's just, I think this is one of the hardest things is to be able to love someone who has completely almost opposing views from you on how to make the world a better place. Because it really does mean that you have to just see this living, suffering being who wants happiness and just not, because part of our problem is our attachment to our own view. We think we are absolutely right. And that doesn't exist. It all depends. Context makes a huge difference. But it's just mainly that we want to, according to the Buddha, the reason we're polarized is because we keep practicing polarity. It reflects our minds. It doesn't come up through magic. It is because we have the habit of holding, being on opposite sides of something. And we just persist in that, and the more we just have friends that are, have the same kind of, view that we have, the deeper the polarization gets. And that just creates this creates the cause to either be born in a place where you don't have any voice at all, or to be born in a place that's constantly divided by civil war.
To overcome that,
We have to just cherish others and quit being attached to our view, not make the view more important. That doesn't mean you don't fight for it in the sense of, doing everything you can to make your view of how laws should be or what they should say the law of the land. That's one of the ways, but learning how to cooperate, learning to be able to listen from the, with the ears that say, I know you want your loved ones to be safe too. And not listen with, oh my God, can't believe that's your point of view. Yeah.
Something that comes up to me sometimes has been, at least my view, has been an undervalued experience for, I think, not just youth, but adults here too, for nonviolent ways. As much as people are seeing, like we're teaching, how to find this calmness within yourself and spend the time to actually learn who you are and your own nature. And hence, I get the book that I might be helping with and teaching from there. And you see people, you see how society is going on. You mentioned the polarization between the two, right? Between witnessed over the past 6 years.
Right.
And that's why you get this 20-year-old or 18, 16-year-old who comes with a gun and shoots up the street.
But that's not just why.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I think it's maybe cultural too. I think that was one of my thoughts here.
Okay, but the point is we want to strip it down even further because society is just us. Culture is just us. We're born in a particular culture because we created the karmic cause to be born there. So if you're in a country that has, like one of the things we can all rejoice of in this country is this is one of the most diverse countries in the world. One of the reasons we stand out in other countries is because we look different than everybody else there, because they all look the same. And I'm not making that up. I mean, unless you're in the big cities like Paris and London and, all the capital cities in the world, there's a very homogeneous population in many, many countries, whereas we don't look that way. And nothing about the way we act. We definitely, do reflect, oh, they must be from America. So sometimes that's a good thing. Not everybody hates us. So, but this is, so the point is that we want to strip away this idea that somehow this has evolved in the past 100 years. This has been evolving since beginningless time. So this is why holding on to the idea that this particular point in time needs to get better for me to be happy is futile. If you transform your mind, you may not be born on this planet. Next life. You may create the cause to be born where there isn't racism, there isn't sexism, there isn't whatever ism you want to, there's no division between peoples or living beings, that all life is respected. But we have to create the cause to be born there.
Is agreeing with the opposing view, that helpful?
No, not always. It's not about just saying, this is about that cherishing others. That gets back to the point. Every now and then, I remember what the point is. Okay, so one of our obstacles to cherishing others is thinking that we have to placate others, or that we have to be a doormat for others, or that we have to, just because, you know, they're valuable, we have to somehow be less valuable, you know, and that's not correct. You know, it's more like what, you know, what your ideal version of a parent is. You know, like if you, when you became a parent or thought about being a parent or decided not to become a parent, you know, this idea of being able to help, you know, teach your children what, you know, the skills of life, you know, but also be able to accept them from, you know, where they are. That does not mean indulging them. That doesn't mean just making them feel like they can get whatever they want in every moment. In fact, it's the opposite of that, because that's not a life skill. That's a disaster for the future. You know, so it isn't about, you know, but it's about learning to agree to disagree, about learning to be respectful in spite of the different points of view. And accepting that you can't make someone else be that way. You know, you can just do from your own side. You know, you can try to be respectful. You can try to be non-inflammatory, you know, but it doesn't mean they'll cooperate, and that's okay. It's just we want to stay calm within ourselves and not become reactive. You know, it's just like you teach kids, you know, you have to walk away from the argument. You know, you don't beat them up. But people who firmly believe that the answer is to kill everybody that is their enemy just have the wrong reasoning. It's just not true. But it's talked about so much in the teachings. It's clearly been a habit energy for eons. You know, I mean, let's face it. You know, we keep, you know, I used to just wish sharks would go away. I had no desire to kill sharks. I just didn't want them in any ocean I was getting in. You know, I'm like that about snakes. You know, it's not that I want them to die. I just don't want them to be where I am. You know, that's all about me. 100,000% is about me, you know, but the, you know, so it's recognizing that in order to not bump into the snakes and not bump into the sharks, you have to not be that for someone else. You know, you bump into people you don't like because you act that way around others who don't like you. You know, this is the thing, you know, if we don't learn to get along and be accepting, and accepting does not mean agreeing. Just accepting that someone has a different point of view. That does not make them evil. It can make them dangerous. We may have to separate them from society. You know, nothing wrong with that, because it just, you know, letting them still be in society and kill more people is just causing them, you know, eons of negative karma that's going to ripen in the future. You know, we just keep trading places. But it's, you know, this is, I think, one of the hardest things is this, especially in times where we're fearful. You know, you know, that sense of self, you know, that's what it stirs up, this feeling that, you know, this person's view is going to really harm me. And of course, some points of view do harm us. You know, if we're in the crosshairs. So we need to, and we need to get out of our own little, you know, as long as I'm safe, it's okay. You know, it's like people who are in the groups that have the ism against them, you know, whether, you know, it's, you know, they don't need to teach the ones who are not in that group. You know, it's like men need to figure it out about sexism. They need to learn it. Women already get it. You know, Black people don't need to teach us about racism if you're white. We need to figure it out. We need to educate ourselves to listen and change and transform our ways of being. You know, It's, you know, when you're in the other group, it's an opportunity to educate, to learn how you might be offensive, to learn, you know, why it might be offensive, and to make the determination, I don't want to be that way towards others. Well, it takes work. As opposed to this idea that, oh, they're just too sensitive. You know, that's not a problem. I had my serious conversation with Joan this year. I always had at least one serious conversation with Joan, was about whether or not it was appropriate to want to specify that you wanted a woman as the next Supreme Court justice nominee. You know, she goes, I think it should be the most qualified. I'm going, yeah, well, there are women that are most qualified, but most, I mean, let's face it, they're going to be equally qualified people. You have to come up with something, yeah. But we had this long discussion about it, just because, you know, she's perfectly comfortable in a patriarchal world. That's been her whole life. You know, she's a smart woman, and she was smart enough to enjoy the benefits she had from that. You know. So we just, you know, it's just a different, it's learning that we, you know, we have. No one has to prove these things to us. Just like when we're sitting there and somebody's not hearing us when we're suffering, you know, and we just want to go, trust me, this hurts me. I can't explain it, but please stop. You know, we don't need other people, you know, people who feel like there's some ism against them, racism or sexism or straightism, I don't know what other words are, you know, don't have to prove to us that this exists. We need to recognize its existence. You know, the oppressed group are oppressed. Their voice is treated as suspect. So the oppressing group needs to start looking at themselves. They don't need any help. I mean, they do need help, but you know, they, as if I'm not part of that group. I am part of that group. I'm in many oppressing groups. I'm also in an oppressed group, and that's true for most of us. Most of us are both. You know. So cherishing others isn't about just exceeding defeat, you know, just saying, have it your way. It's not about that. It's about, I value you, I hear you, I disagree with you. But that doesn't make me value you less. I want you safe too. You know? So when we think about cherishing others, we just need to, you know, like look at how we want to be cherished. And then we need to cross out those things that we realize are really about attachment. So not really about cherishing, it's about, oh, getting what we want. You know, so we can become more discerning. But most of us want to be respected. We want to have our concerns heard. We want to feel safe. We want to have food. We want shelter. We want to be able to walk out of our houses without fear of being shot. No. And there's not an easy solution to these things. It's complicated. You know, we don't get to just say, okay, we're starting from today and we're going to do everything differently. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So sitting, getting comfortable with our own stillness, recognizing there actually is a calmness underneath all that agitation on the surface. It's a tool that really helps us in all these situations that trigger us. You know, whether it's someone else's opinion or someone trying to force their view onto you, you know, whether it's just, you know, indifference or, you know, we're not getting what we want, whatever it is. If the more we're able to recall that there's a peacefulness that can be present no matter what's happening out here. You know, the world does not have to make us happy, does not have to make us peaceful. We can start from a place of peace. You know, but we have to get in touch with that and practice it and remember it. And it's easy to get off track. It's easy to forget. It's a lifelong habit. It's not one that's just for a few weeks in retreat, or, you know, it's something that is, you know, more important than brushing your teeth for your own mental health. I mean, you know, it is just learning the skill that can save you in every situation. Because you're never going to have everybody agree with you. You're never going to have everybody give you what you want. You're never going to have or even, you know, you may never get anything that you want. I mean, all these things are possible. But it doesn't mean that we have to be disturbed all the time. And this is how people can handle, you know, you think, you know, like some people can handle crises well. You know, whatever they've been able to learn how to compartmentalize. Like, I'm always amazed at how, you know, physicians, how emergency room physicians can function in a, you know, big crisis, you know, but you know, they're just focused, you know, and thank goodness, you know, but we, you know, we want to learn how to be able to maintain this sense of, it doesn't matter what's happening out here. I can stay sane inside. Oh. And I will always act and think better if I start from that place. And not get all, you know, like as if every moment is a life or death decision. Save up your energy for those life and death decisions. You should see the faces I see on both sides, on the Zoom and also in. Oh, hi, Patty. What's up? Thanks. I don't see that little hand.
Thank you. I think that was Anthony. I'm not sure. So these practicing polarity and trying not to do that anymore, and using the cherishing others, and in these conversations that are very difficult, political conversations, social conversations, and stop being attached to our view, recognizing, I know you want your loved ones to be safe too. By doing that, is that offering the victory to others? I mean, in this kind of situation, if you're trying to practice that perfection, does that parlay into that, or am I confusing things?
I think you're kind of conflating it, putting those two together when they don't need to be put together. Because you can cherish others, you know, as you vote against them. You know, there are times in discussions where we just have to, you know, give victory to others, you know, kind of going, okay, I hear you, and just ending it there, you know, because it's not going anywhere. You know, so we can also practice that. And we should practice that whenever, especially if we've been hooked. You know, but it's, you know, being able to stand back and kind of go, the energy that's being percolated in this conversation is harmful, you know, so I'm going to end it here, you know, and you don't have to say that out loud. You can just, you know, oh, I hear you. We never have to say, I agree with you. You know, that can be dangerous. There are situations where if your physical being is threatened, it might be good to say, I agree with you. You know, abusive relationships are all, you know, can be like that. It's just, you know, but recognizing that you just say that in the moment that you're about to get hit, and then you like move out of the house. You know, it's not about just, oh, well, if I act just right, I won't get hit. That's not true. Because other people are acting from what? Their self-cherishing, their misunderstanding how we exist, you know, their distorted views, just like we do. So this giving victory to others is within this context of understanding that not every moment has to be according to your point of view. You know, that we just fine. You know, yes, we can go to this restaurant. Yes, we can go to this movie. Yes, we can, you know, I don't know. And sometimes, you know, it's just, it's like we have, they are now have classes, you know, you'll see occasionally courses offered online and I'm sure in person, you know, about how to listen to someone who you disagree with, how to have constructive conversations. Now you can't have them with everybody because not everybody wants to, you know, but there are others who have different views than you do that also want to understand the opposing points of view and try to come up with some, you know, unforeseen solution, you know, based on the points of view of everybody. You know, so it's, you know, they're out there. So if you want to have a voice and really, you know, be an effective voice in things that involve elections and legislation and stuff, you might want to take those kinds of courses so you can really learn how to be, to stay in the conversation, to be able to write letters to people that they might actually read because you've got some skills in expressing yourself that isn't attacking, you know, whatever. You know, being political, easy for me to say. Yeah. Water. Being politically active is not anti-Buddhist. You know, we're allowed. Yes, it is like agree to disagree. You know, sometimes, you know, that's got to be where you stop because there's just, you know, you're just still trying to convince each other. You've stopped listening and you're just trying to get the other person to take your point of view. No, that's not the purpose of a conversation. It might be the purpose of a debate, but it's not a purpose of a conversation. And even in our debates, you know, it's really about the audience. Vote for me because, you know, my point of view will benefit you. This is hard work. Being sane is hard work.
Humility can be a helpful partner.
Humility is definitely one of the key features, is this acceptance that we're not Buddhas. We can pretend that we have the right point of view, and our point of view may be less distorted. Our point of view may be more based on how things actually exist. You know, it's not that our point of view is definitely wrong. It's just that it's, you know, recognizing that we are also just trying to do the best we can to understand things the best way we can. And it's not going to be perfect. And the truth is, there's no perfect solution till we're out of samsara, because all the people that are making up our world are unenlightened beings. That's all that we are capable of seeing. Until we become enlightened, we can't recognize Buddhas. We can't, it's not like Shakyamuni Buddha could just walk around and everybody go, oh, Siddhartha, he's an enlightened being. Let's follow him. That's not how it works. We don't create the cause to see an enlightened being. We don't recognize them. This is the idea about, saying prayers to remove the obstacles for your teacher's long life. It's this idea that they're Buddhas. So they don't have to be sick or suffer or display anything, but we haven't created the cause to be able to see them that way. And so they manifest illnesses. They die. Whether or not it's true is not really the important part. The important part is to think that way. That the problem with this situation are my past actions. If we're suffering, we created the cause for that. It is our past actions. It's just not, we're not in it alone. The world's a mess because the people who inhabit this world have messy minds. Do they have Buddha nature? Absolutely. So there's always, there's hope. It's just not in samsara. The hope is that we all can get out of samsara and quit making these mistakes. But in the meantime, we can benefit others. On the conventional level, we can help others. We can, by cherishing them. So I think one of the hard things at this, is this for ourselves and others, is this idea that we want to really drop the idea that someone has to deserve happiness. They have to deserve freedom from suffering. Because that's one of the reasons we trash talk ourselves. We just act like we're worthless because we've made a mistake. And therefore, we deserve whatever happens to us. And Buddha, and it's just cause and effect. It's not about deserving. It's just about that's what happens. You do this, this is what happens. The good news is it means we have all the power to quit doing that. So something else will happen. But it's not instant. But we have time. If the teachings are correct, we have nothing but time. It's just that we might not have this body. We won't have this body for long, So trusting that our efforts matter because it's not about, getting the chocolate cake today. It's about lasting happiness where there is no suffering at all. That's unimaginable. And we live in cultures that teach this idea that, the reasons for it are either mysterious, or because you don't deserve it, or blah, blah, blah. The Buddha just said it's just cause and effect. You create the cause for suffering, it will ripen in the future. That's what will happen. But if you think you're not skilled, that you couldn't possibly have Buddha potential, think about everything that you've enjoyed in this life. Every moment of pleasure, every moment of seeing something beautiful, every moment of hearing something beautiful, every moment of having touched that you like, every moment that you've eaten something you like, all of those are the result of positive actions. All the resources you have. You know, these are results of our good actions. But if we want more lasting, results, we have to be good with our dedications, our motivation to do it for the big picture. And so it's important to think about, like humility, it's important to think about that just because these good conditions ripen for us this life, doesn't mean they'll ripen in the next life. We have to create the cause for that in this life. So, because sometimes we get in the trap of thinking that karma is all about getting what you deserve. So all those people born in places that there are famines or wars or disease or I don't know, whatever you can think of, that somehow, they must have been really bad people. What does the Buddha say is the cause of that kind of rebirth?
Past life.
What's the direct cause?
Miserliness.
Well, not having resources, but you got a human rebirth. That's one good resource. Okay, so what's the cause? What do you have to be born human? Ethics. That means every human being on this planet has practiced ethics. No matter how they're acting now, every single one created the cause to be born human by practicing ethics. Now, what determines what kind of rebirth, a human rebirth you have, any kind of rebirth you have for that matter? Dig deep into that knowledge well. What is the cause of rebirth?
Your actions.
What's the direct cause?
State of mind before dying.
Yeah. The state of mind at the moment you die. So if you're getting murdered and you're going, that might not be a great rebirth you've just created the cause for. So judging people, that are born in these places with, really yucky conditions, it's really meaningless because it just means one moment at the time of death, they had a turbulent mind, and they hadn't created enough causes for resources in that line, but they, so I mean, it's a mixture, isn't it? So any of us could have been born in these terrible circumstances. We've all created the cause for it. All we have to do is see ourselves when we're mad to know that we have all the causes to be born in, not such a great condition. So judging others, it's not about blame or, ooh, look at you. You must have really done something terrible, because we've all done something terrible. We've done many things that are terrible. Hence, we're in a world that's such a mess. So dropping this deserving thing, dropping this idea that somehow I'm better than because see, look at what I've got. None of that, or look at my point of view, whatever it is we're attached to, is really meaningless. It doesn't mean in day-to-day life, it doesn't have a meaning, because we have to live with each other. So we have to protect ourselves from people who are out of control. We need, so it's not about that. It's about understanding that it's all temporary. It's all changing. We could literally go from having tons of resources to having none tomorrow. That's how the people in Ukraine are experiencing things at this moment. And whole cities that are just gone now. And they're not alone. That's happened all over the world. The tsunami just wiped out coastlines. So we just have to recognize that it's we have these good conditions for a limited amount of time. If we want more of them, we want to create the cause while we have these good conditions. for them to arise again. And this is a great thing. We want to enjoy our good conditions because they are the fruits of good actions. We just want them to be really meaningful so that, you know, they ripen in ways in which will help us keep transforming our minds and hearts so that we can get out of here, so to speak. Just a figure of speech. You don't actually have to go anywhere. Just your experience completely changes. So, oh my goodness. I tell you, I always look at the clock when it's like 5 minutes to 12. And then the next time I look, it's time's up. Sorry about that. I do go on. So, all righty. Let me look at this chat thing. Yes, I like Sunny Rinpoche Tali just saying that she found it helpful to look at that clip I sent about the handshake practice. I just love that whole image of, you know, going, oh, there it is again. You know, we really have to, it's really effortful when we're starting to learn a new habit. So the old habits really come in. Yes, and the beautiful monsters, his phrasing of beautiful monsters, calling out disturbing emotions, beautiful monsters, because we really have a habit of rejecting ourselves, you know? And so it's so important to recognize habits we want to abandon, but not look at them as somehow, you know, that we are a monster. No, it's just this state of mind. You know, and they can be beautiful monsters in the sense that it is exactly what can push us to transform. Just as to, you know, where we are. All right, there's another thing in the chat. Oh, I saw. Okay. Okay, so let's dedicate, you know, all our efforts of, you know, trying to sort through all this kind of stuff, try to improve our ability to cherish others and to cherish ourselves along the way. You know, we treat, you know, equalizing. So we'll go to page 244 or 6, 246. And so we're dedicating our positive accumulation to ripen in this way. Okay. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creatures suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments, whatever diseases there are in the world. May they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Then for the long, healthy, happy lives of our teachers, page 244. There's Holiness, the Dalai Lama. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. So next week's my last week for this year, I think. I don't think I'll be doing anything for the rest of the year except retreat, unless, there's some emergency I can call, but I'm not planning, it's not on my schedule anyway. If you're interested in an ongoing kind of Zoom discussion group on the Lam Rim, the path to enlightenment, that might come up. So let me know if you're interested in that, because as I do this retreat, I might learn something. I'd be happy to share. We'll see what happens. If you don't hear from me, it's not going so well. But that's the way it works. Yes, Barry.
Is this the live